The summer heat clung to the peeling paint of the front porch as cicadas hummed their lazy song in the trees. Inside a small two-bedroom home tucked away in the heart of Pine Grove, Louisiana, Clara Holmes sat on the edge of her worn sofa, the remote in her hand trembling slightly. Her living room was modest. Floral curtains, sun-faded couch cushions, and a mantelpiece cluttered with faded photographs. But on the far wall, above the fireplace, hung one image larger than the rest, a framed photograph of Dr. Everett Holmes, standing beside a young girl with ribbons in her hair. "Almost time," Clara whispered, glancing at the clock. 5:58 p.m. Behind her, footsteps approached. Maya Holmes, now 19, entered the room, her curly hair pulled into a loose ponytail, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. "Did they say they'd air it again this year?" she asked gently. Clara nodded, her eyes locked on the television. "They always do. Same time. Every July 12th. Maya sat beside her mother without a word, slipping her hand over Clara's. The TV screen cut to a commercial, then faded into the local news anchor's solemn face. "Today marks 14 years since the disappearance of local physician Dr. Everett Holmes," the anchor began. "Dr. Holmes was last seen on the evening of July 12, 1995, leaving a patient's home on the outskirts of Pine Grove. He never returned home. No trace of his vehicle was ever found. He leaves behind a wife, Clara Holmes, and a daughter, Maya." A black and white photo filled the screen. Everett Holmes, tall, proud, with deep brown skin and kind eyes. He wore a white coat, his stethoscope slung casually around his neck. Next to him, little Maya grinned, holding his hand tightly. "If you have any information," the anchor continued, "please contact the Pine Grove Police Department. Dr. Holmes is remembered as a compassionate man, a healer, and a friend to this community." Clara turned off the television. The silence that followed was familiar. Thick, suffocating, heavy with 14 years of absence. Maya looked over at her mother. "He'd be 58 now." Clara didn't respond. Instead, she stood slowly and walked to the bookshelf. From the top shelf, she pulled a worn, leather-bound album. It creaked as she opened it, revealing snapshots of a life interrupted. "Your dad used to bring medicine to people who couldn't afford it," Clara said, her fingers brushing a photo of Everett sitting on the tailgate of his old blue pickup. "He kept a notebook of who still owed what, but he never collected. He just wrote, 'God will provide,' at the bottom." Maya smiled faintly. "You used to say that too." "I still do," Clara said quietly. She turned the page. A photo of Everett and Maya, she must have been 5, in front of the town's 4th of July parade. Everett had her on his shoulders, both of them waving at the camera. His mustache was thick, his smile wide. That was 8 days before he vanished. "He called around 6 that night," Clara said suddenly. "Said he had one more house call to make before dinner. Said he'd bring gumbo from Mr. Powell's diner on his way back. I told him to get the cornbread too." Maya stared at the photo in her mother's hands. "He never made it home." "No," Clara whispered, "and he didn't." The phone rang. They both froze. Clara set the photo album down and stood, her movements stiff. She crossed the room, picked up the receiver, and pressed it to her ear. "Hello? Mrs. Holmes?" came a voice, male, young, nervous.
"Yes?"
"This is Officer Delaney, Pine Grove PD. I'm calling because we had something turned in this afternoon. From the old church playground on Rose Hill." Clara's breath caught. "What sort of something?" An old leather medical bag," he said. "Still locked. A maintenance crew found it under a bench when they started demolition. We didn't think much of it until we opened the ID slot. The name on it is Everett Holmes." For a moment, Clara didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there with the phone against her ear, her heart thundering in her chest. "Mrs. Holmes?" the officer repeated. "I'll be there," she said, her voice steely now. "Tell them not to touch anything else. I'm on my way." She hung up and turned to Maya, who was already on her feet. "They found it?" Maya asked. "His bag?" Clara nodded. "They found his medical bag, under a playground bench." Maya's mouth fell open. "After all these years?" Clara didn't answer. She moved quickly toward the front door, grabbing her keys. "Come on," she said. "Let's go." As they stepped out into the humid dusk, the cicadas were still screaming, but now their song felt different, like something buried was finally clawing its way back to the surface. The drive to the Pine Grove Police Department was a blur. Clara gripped the steering wheel with both hands, her knuckles pale, while Maya stared silently out the window, her mind racing. The sun was dipping low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, but neither of them noticed. The town passed them by in quiet snapshots. The old diner Everett used to frequent, the church where they held vigils, the elementary school where Maya once waited for her father to pick her up. Everything looked the same, and yet something fundamental had shifted. When they arrived at the station, a young officer was waiting outside. His uniform looked freshly pressed and his posture was straight, but his eyes betrayed a mix of nervousness and compassion. "Mrs. Holmes?" he asked as Clara stepped from the car.
Yes.
"I'm Officer Delaney. Thank you for coming so quickly. We've secured the item in our evidence room. It hasn't been opened fully, only enough to see the ID. Please come inside." Clara nodded and Maya followed close behind as they entered the cool, sterile lobby of the station. Everything inside buzzed with fluorescent light and quiet urgency. Clara could feel her pulse in her ears. Officer Delaney led them down a hallway and into a small room with a steel table in the center. On the table sat a leather medical bag, dark brown, cracked at the edges but intact. A thin layer of dust still coated the handle. Attached to it was a faded luggage tag encased in a brittle plastic sleeve. Clara stepped forward slowly. Her hand hovered above the bag, not quite touching it. This was his," she whispered. "Are you sure?" Delaney asked gently. Clara nodded. "He always carried it. Said he didn't trust clinic drawers. This..." She finally placed her fingers on the worn leather. "This is his." Delaney cleared his throat. "We haven't opened it beyond confirming the tag. Would you feel comfortable doing so?" Maya stepped beside her mother. "We'll do it together." Clara unfastened the brass clasp with trembling fingers. It let out a soft click, and the bag creaked open. Inside were several worn medical tools, an old stethoscope, a pair of reading glasses, a folded prescription pad with Dr. Everett Holmes printed across the top, and something else, a Polaroid photo tucked beneath the glasses case. Clara picked it up with gloved fingers the officer handed her. Her breath hitched. It showed a man with dark skin and salt and pepper hair, lying on what appeared to be a concrete floor, his hands tied loosely in front of him. The lighting was poor. The man's eyes were closed. His body was thin, almost frail. Clara's voice cracked. "That's Everett, but older. He's alive in this." Delaney's face paled. "May I?" He took the photo, examined the back. A faded number was scribbled in pencil, 2001. "That can't be right," Maya whispered. "If this was taken in 2001, he was alive 6 years after he vanished." Delaney nodded slowly. "We're going to have our forensic team analyze the photo, the handwriting, the materials in the bag. But Mrs. Holmes, this changes everything. Someone had this. Someone knew where he was. Maybe still does." Clara gripped the table for support. "That bag was planted." Delaney turned to her. "Planted?" "Yes," Clara said firmly. "That playground has been there forever. I walk past it almost every week. That bag wasn't there before. Someone wanted it to be found now." Delaney nodded thoughtfully. "It could have been left during prep for demolition. Maybe the person felt guilty, or maybe it's a message." Maya leaned forward. "Have you checked surveillance? Nearby houses? Businesses?" "We're already pulling footage from the school across the street," Delaney replied. "But the playground's been mostly abandoned. The security cameras only cover the front gate. The back fence is open. Anyone could have walked in." "Why now?" Clara said softly. "Why after 14 years?" Before anyone could answer, another officer poked his head in. "Delaney, you'll want to see this. We found something else behind the playground fence." Clara and Maya exchanged a look, then followed as Delaney led them outside. The air was heavier now, the evening breeze warm against their skin. Behind the chain-link fence of the playground sat a rusted dumpster, half full with broken benches and old mulch bags. Leaning against the base was an object half buried in gravel. Delaney crouched and pulled it free. It was a photo frame, the glass cracked but intact. Inside, a newspaper clipping, yellowed and creased. The headline read, "Local doctor warned of prescription fraud. Ring weeks before disappearance." Delaney looked up slowly. "You ever see this article?" he asked Clara. "No," she replied, her voice shaking. "Never." Delaney turned to Maya. "We're going to reopen the entire case file. We're going to find out who left that bag, who had that photo, and what your father was mixed up in." Maya looked down at the medical bag still clutched in her arms. The leather smelled like dust and time, but somewhere deep inside it also smelled like hope. By Monday morning, the playground was cordoned off with yellow tape, and a patrol car sat posted at the entrance. The news had already leaked. Not the full details, but enough. Whispers of the Holmes case drifted through Pine Grove like pollen. Clara sat on her porch in a weathered rocking chair, the medical bag now locked in an evidence locker, but its image fresh in her mind. Inside, Maya scrolled through old local newspaper archives. Her laptop flickered with grainy headlines from the 90s. After an hour of clicking, cross-referencing, and zooming in on PDFs, she stopped cold. An arrest report, dated June 1995. Name, Trent Reeves. Charge, disorderly conduct, harassment at Holmes Family Clinic. Complainant, Dr. Everett Holmes. Maya's eyes widened. She clicked deeper. A few lines down, the details were brief but telling. Subject became aggressive after being denied prescription refill. Threatened staff. Removed by officers. No charges filed by Dr. Holmes. She grabbed her phone. Mom! Clara stepped inside, wiping her hands on a dish towel. What is it? Maya turned the screen. This man, Trent Reeves. Dad reported him a month before he disappeared. Clara's brow furrowed. I remember the name. He came in for pain medication, had an old back injury, said no one else would treat him. Everett told me he was suspicious. Why wasn't he investigated back then? Because your father didn't press charges. Said he pitied him. Maya pulled up a local property record next. He's still in Pine Grove, owns a place off Oak Hollow Road, a trailer behind an old farmhouse. Clara crossed her arms. You're not going out there. I'm just going to tell Officer Delaney, Maya said, standing. Let the police check it out. By the time Maya reached the station, Delaney was already at his desk, reviewing the Polaroid photo found in the bag under magnification. Trent Reeves, she said, placing the printed article and arrest record on his desk. He had a fight with my dad, June 1995. Delaney skimmed the report. We missed this. Because there were no charges. But he's still here, still working odd jobs. Delaney leaned back in his chair. You're saying the man who threatened your father is still within 5 miles of where the bag was found? Maya nodded. Delaney stood. I'll get a warrant, but we won't wait for it to do a little talking first. The Reeves property was everything you expected it to be. Faded siding, weeds curling over broken steps, and a no trespassing sign held up with duct tape. Delaney knocked twice on the trailer door. No answer. From the side of the house, a wiry man emerged, sleeves rolled up, sweat-stained baseball cap tugged low. He froze when he saw them. Mr. Reeves? Delaney asked. The man nodded slowly. Detective Delaney, this is Maya Holmes. We'd like to ask you a few questions about a missing persons case. Don't know anything, Trent said immediately, already backing away. We didn't mention the case yet, Delaney replied, but I'm guessing you know which one. Trent's jaw tensed. Where were you Sunday night? Delaney asked. Between 10 p.m. and midnight? Home, watching TV. Anyone who can verify that? Trent scratched at his beard. My dog. You still work on weekends? Maya asked. I heard you do repairs around town. Some, Trent muttered. When people call me. You ever work near Rose Hill Playground? Trent's eyes flicked between them. No, haven't been near that place in years. Delaney glanced at Maya. Mind if we look around your property? Yes, I mind, Trent snapped. You got a warrant? Not yet, but we'll be back with one. Delaney turned, signaling Maya to follow. As they reached the cruiser, Maya said under her breath, He's hiding something. Delaney nodded. Either that, or he's just as greasy as he looks. Back at the station, Delaney made a call to forensics. They're analyzing the prescription pad found in the bag, he explained, and something weird came up. He placed 2 prescription slips side by side, one freshly dusted from the bag, the other an old archived copy from the Holmes Clinic records, dated July 10th, 1995. Look at the handwriting, he said. Maya leaned in. The signatures were nearly identical, except one tiny detail. The G in Holmes, Delaney pointed. It loops up here, tapping the old slip, but in this one, it drops down. So, your father had very specific handwriting. What if someone forged a few of these to make it look like Everett was writing scripts that he wasn't? Maya's stomach dropped. A fake prescription ring? Possibly. And your father caught on. Maybe even tried to warn someone. That article we found at the playground, the one about prescription fraud, could have been a threat. A reminder to keep quiet, or else. But who would go through that trouble now, Maya asked. Why plant the bag? Either guilt or fear. Someone's trying to redirect our attention, and I don't think it's Trent. Delaney leaned in. There's someone else in this town who knew your father's routine, his habits, and had access to his patients. Someone who never left, who blends in, and who has a reason to erase the past. He flipped open the missing persons file again. On a yellowed intake sheet, a familiar name sat in faded ink. Requisitioned by T. Reeves. Approved by E. Holmes. Filed by C.L. Reeves. Delaney pointed to it. Who's C.L. Reeves? Maya stared. His brother. The name C.L. Reeves hadn't appeared in any recent records. No address, no phone number, no employment history since 1997. But the deeper Delaney and Maya dug, the stranger things became. Turns out Carl Lester Reeves, Trent's older brother, had once worked as a night clerk at the Pine Grove Community Health Center, the same clinic where Dr. Everett Holmes practiced. He was quiet, almost invisible. Never married, lived alone on the edge of town before abruptly disappearing in 1998. He just quit showing up one day, said one of the clinic's former nurses. No explanation. Management never followed up. Back then, people just let things go. Maya stared at the photo in the old HR file. Carl, mid-40s, thin face, pale skin, glasses thick as bottle caps. Something about him felt wrong, even in a still image. That night, Clara found Maya still awake, laptop open, papers strewn across the dining table. I don't want you chasing ghosts, Clara said gently. Maya shook her head. We're not. Mom, I think Dad was caught in something bigger, like a fake prescription ring. Carl and Trent were both involved. They used Dad's name. Clara sat slowly. But why take him? Maybe he threatened to go public. Maybe they thought if he disappeared, the clinic would move on quietly. They were wrong, Clara whispered. We never moved on. The next day, Delaney and Maya headed back to Oak Hollow, this time with a search warrant. Trent wasn't home, but his trailer door was unlocked and the backyard looked recently disturbed. Check this out, Delaney said, kneeling beside a fresh trail in the grass. Tire marks leading into the woods. As they followed it, something appeared ahead, a wooden shed, barely visible through the trees, half collapsed and leaning sideways. Maya stepped closer, her breath caught. Carved into the shed's door, faded by rain and time, were 3 letters. E. Harja. Everett Holmes, she said, heart pounding. Delaney pushed the door open. Inside, the shed was dark, smelling of mildew and rot. But scattered across the dirt floor were personal effects. A cracked wristwatch, a pair of broken reading glasses, and, tucked beneath a dirty tarp, a duffel bag filled with tattered clothing. Delaney swept his flashlight around. There's something under the floorboards. They pried up the warped wood. Beneath it lay a metal lockbox, rusted but intact. Delaney popped it open with a crowbar. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a weather-worn leather journal. Maya carefully lifted it out. The first page read, Property of Dr. Everett Holmes, June 1995. She opened it. The first entry was dated July 13th, one day after Everett vanished. They've taken my car. I'm in a dark room. No windows. They come in only to feed me and inject something. I'm weak. I don't know where I am. I think I know one of the voices. Trent. Maybe Carl too. They argued. One said, he saw too much. Maya's hand trembled as she turned the pages. They keep asking about the files, the ones I gave to the state board. I told them I mailed it. They don't believe me. Another entry. I heard a fire alarm today. I think the building is abandoned now. No one has come in 3 days. I'm running low on water. If someone finds this, my wife's name is Clara. My daughter is Maya. Please tell them I tried. The final entry was dated March 1999, nearly 4 years after he vanished. They moved me. It's colder here. The man who brings food is not Trent. He's older, quiet. I don't know how much longer I have. Maya closed the journal, tears streaking her cheeks. He was alive for years. Delaney crouched beside her. This changes everything. We'll re-interview Trent. Pressure him. If he didn't kill your father, then someone else did. And if your father survived, maybe he's still... He didn't finish the sentence. Because in the corner of the shed, half covered by moldy boxes, Delaney spotted something else. A photo album. Inside were dozens of pictures, some blurred, some faded. All taken inside what looked like a concrete basement. In every photo, Everett Holmes. Eyes open in some, closed in others. In one photo, he held a small chalkboard with a date written, October 2002. Maya gasped. That's 7 years after he vanished. He was alive 7 years after, Delaney said slowly, and someone was documenting it. They returned to the station, the journal and photos secured. Clara arrived an hour later, pale, shaken but composed. She stared at the photos for a long time, then said softly, "This was never just about money. They punished him. For being good. For being honest." Delaney nodded. "And someone's still out there who knows exactly where he is, or where he was kept." Maya turned to him. "So where do we go now?" Delaney took a deep breath. "We go back to the beginning. Back to the clinic. Back to the one place no one searched in 14 years. The next morning, a storm rolled into Pine Grove, dark clouds blanketing the sky, as if the town itself was bracing for what was about to come. Delaney, Clara, and Maya stood outside the abandoned Pine Grove Sanitarium, a facility shut down in 2003 after years of neglect and rumored abuse. It had once been a community-run rehab and mental health center. What most people didn't know was that Carl Reeves had worked there briefly, just before he disappeared. "It's the only place left connected to both Everett and the Reeves brothers," Delaney said, flashlight in hand. "No power, no staff. County never bothered sealing it up properly." The entrance was boarded, but Delaney kicked through the rotted door. Inside, the air was damp, the walls covered in peeling paint and mildew. Maya clutched the journal against her chest, as if Everett himself was guiding her steps. They moved carefully through crumbling hallways and collapsed ceilings until they found a locked basement door behind the old pharmacy wing. Delaney pried it open. The stairs descended into darkness. Clara hesitated, then took the first step. "We've come this far." They reached the basement, a long, narrow hallway lined with heavy metal doors. Most were open, revealing dusty gurneys, rusted IV poles, and forgotten files. But one door at the very end stood shut, its window painted black from the inside. Delaney stepped forward and knocked once. Nothing. He pulled out a master key the town had on file. The lock clicked. As he swung the door open, his flashlight scanned the room, and Clara gasped. In the far corner, huddled on a thin mattress beneath layers of old blankets, sat a man, gaunt, bearded, with streaks of gray in his hair. His skin was pale, his frame thin, but he was breathing. He looked up, squinting against the light. It was Dr. Everett Holmes. Clara cried out and rushed forward, falling to her knees beside him. "Everett! Baby!" Everett blinked slowly, his lips cracked open, his voice barely a whisper. "Clara?" Maya dropped beside him. "Daddy, it's me, it's Maya." He reached up with trembling fingers and touched her face, eyes filled with tears. "You're real," he breathed. "I prayed. Every day." Delaney stepped back, swallowing hard. Behind him, the other rooms remained silent. Later, at Pine Grove Memorial Hospital, Everett lay clean, shaved, and hooked to IVs. He'd lost weight. His memory faded in and out. But one thing was clear. He'd been held for over a decade, kept in the sanitarium basement long after the building was abandoned. Delaney met with the state police. Together, they pieced it all together. In 1995, Everett uncovered a fake prescription scheme run through the clinic. Trent Reeves was forging his signature. Carl Reeves was distributing the meds. When Everett threatened to report them, they abducted him, hiding him first in a shed, then moving him to the sanitarium basement when things got too risky. Carl remained behind the scenes, checking in periodically. But after his sudden death from a stroke in 2003, no one was left to move Everett again. Trent never knew where Carl kept him, and Carl's final act may have been planting the medical bag, a breadcrumb, a cry for redemption, or guilt. The photo albums? Likely Carl's obsession with control. The journal? Everett's only way of remembering who he was. Weeks passed. Clara never left Everett's side. Maya documented everything, scanning pages from the journal, taping audio interviews with her father when he could speak clearly. On a quiet Sunday morning, Everett sat in a wheelchair near their porch, a blanket over his legs. He stared at the sunlight, blinking against its warmth. "You kept the light on," he whispered to Clara. "Every night," she replied. He turned to Maya. "You're so grown." "You're finally home," she said, her eyes full. Everett nodded slowly. "I never stopped being a doctor. Even in that room, I dreamed of helping again." The town held a vigil that weekend, not for mourning, but for miracle. People gathered outside the clinic where Everett once served. Photos of his younger self stood on easels beside new ones, of the man who had endured, who had survived. The mayor called it a return of justice, but Maya called it something else. This town buried a secret for 14 years, but it couldn't stay buried forever, because the truth has roots, and it grows back, no matter how deep you try to hide it. And in that quiet town, under the same sky that watched Everett vanish, The lights finally stayed on. Not in hope, but in healing.